idea that the Bank of England can hit a specific inflation target using interest rates is for the birds, I think. Inflation is not a function of what the Bank of England does. The reason inflation went to 11% back in 2021 was not because the Bank of England failed to raise interest rates fast enough. It was because of the war in Ukraine and the impact that had on oil, energy, and food prices. And I think you've said this, Richard, that the default position for inflation is for it to be low. Inflation normally only goes up during periods of during wars. In Britain's case, inflation went up during the Napoleonic War, went up again during the First World War, went up again during the Second World War, and the only time it's really ever gone up in peacetime was in the 1970s when there were specific circumstances. If you look back, the whole of the 19th century, the level of prices, not inflation, level of prices on the eve of the First World War was actually lower than it was at the end of the Napoleonic War. So you had a whole century, effectively, where there were no major wars involving all the great powers of Europe, in which prices actually ended the 100-year period lower than they'd started it, which is a quite a remarkable state of affairs. But it just goes to show that if you have a relatively competitive economy and you have peace, then you don't get very high inflation. So.
Well, we also had something else that happened then, which was technical innovation, which did actually deliver well-being for the population at large. So food prices fell partly because railways made it possible to actually get hold of food from outside your locality. And so suddenly it was actually possible for there to be, well, not necessarily a competitive market, but a more competitive market and a more steady supply, perhaps more importantly, of products. And so technology